Hello tech learners, welcome back my channel The Learning Destinations. I am your host Avinash and today I am going to conduct a session that how you can run a generative AI applications with AWS Lambda. There are two main reasons to conduct these sessions. The first reason was I wanted to show you something where I can run the generative AI application in event driven approach. Now, second reason was suppose you are in meeting with the client and instantly you want to give a demo on LLM application. Now, it is one of the quickest way to deploy LLM application as compared to EC2 Docker containers or Kubernetes pods. Now let's understand how this entire system works. So firstly, user makes a request to this front end and this front end trigger this API gateway. Now this API gateway invoke this Lambda function and at this moment application is just started which further makes a request of query to this OpenAI LLM through OpenAI API and that's how the user receives a response from this OpenAI LLM. Now in this sessions, I'm going to cover this part and this front end part I leave it to you. Okay, so ultimately you will have this API gateway endpoint which further you can integrate with your front end and you can make this entire application. So in this sessions I'm going to cover these parts. All right guys, so now I'm going to start the practical session and this is my script. So firstly I take you through my script. So these are a couple of dependencies that is needed to run this application. And then I have given the API keys. I have hard coded it, but I do not recommend you to hard code it. Better you use the environment file. Then after that, I have defined the payload where I have defined the GPT chat model. And then since it is a question and answer retrieval chatbot, so I have given it a role that you are a chatbot and you are going to give an answer to my query. Okay, then for response I'm using this API endpoint and then there is another main section that is Lambda handler because I'm going to use this application as a event driven application. So I'm going to create a functions and I'm going to run this application inside the AWS Lambda. That is why it is needed to define the Lambda handler so Lambda can call these functions. Okay, so basically if everything goes right then it gives the response of 200 and if there is anything goes wrong then it gives us the response with the status code 400. Okay, so now I'm going to run this application inside the Lambda. Okay, so now I'm going to create the Lambda function. So I already logged in inside my management console, AWS management console, and I'm going to create a function. I give it a name GenAI app and I'm going to run from here. You can choose the environment and since it is a Python based application, so I'm going to choose Python 3.11. Okay, and here if you want you can create the role, let the Lambda create a role for you. I have already created a role that I'm going to select here and then here you can keep it as it is default and then you say create function. Okay, now I have created the functions. There are some modifications that we need to do it here and also we need to upload our code. Okay, so there is a two options. One, we can upload through the zip file and we can go through the Amazon S3 location. Okay, now in order to run this application we need to install the dependencies. So if we go here and we get back to our script, there is some dependency that we need to install like JSON request, Boto3, etc. Okay. So now since this is easy to instance, it is quite easy for me to install like this. Pip install and I can install all the dependencies like this. Okay. But here the challenge is that how we can package it so we can pack all the dependencies and we can bring it inside the Lambda functions. Okay, because in runtime there won't be any dependency. What we need to do is we need to package all the dependencies and then we need to bring it here. Okay, so how we can do it now I'm going to show you. So we need to create a requirements.txt file first. and inside that we need to write down all the dependencies. Okay, so we need to write down OpenAI. First we need it. Actually, I have already written everything. I'm going to share this code to you. Okay, so there is a requirement.txt file. You can copy everything from here and then you can paste it here. So it will be quick rather than typing one by one. Okay. Although Flask is not required, you can eliminate the Flask because I'm not going to run as a web-based applications. Okay. So you can remove the Flask from here. Just since I was testing something else, and that's the reason that I have kept the Flask as well. So it totally depends on you. If you don't require it, just remove it from the requirement.txt file. Okay, so now I'm going to install these dependencies. Okay, so for that we need to run the command pip install, okay, -r, and then we need to define the file, and then after that we need to define the target where we want to install. Okay, so for that I'm going to write it like GenAI package. Okay, so it will create one folder with all the dependencies and the folder name is GenAI -pkg package. Okay, this one, we go here and we have all the dependencies. Okay, now what we need to do, since we need to build a zip file, and in lambda functions all your files should be at the root path of your lambda functions. Okay, so we have our application here, this file GenAI lambda. Okay, now since we need to zip this file, so I'm going to transfer this file into this folder. Okay, we go here and we have this file. Okay, so now I'm going to zip it. Why we are doing this zip? Because we can upload as a zip file. Okay, so now I'm going to run the command zip -r, and one step back, it means one directory back, I'm going to make another zip file. Okay, and we need to give this zip file name is let's say I say GenAI -pkg.zip. Okay, and take it everything from here. Okay, we come one step back and here we have the zip file. Now I'm going to upload this zip file into the S3 so we can take it from the S3 bucket. So now I need one S3 bucket where I can transfer this zip file, and from there we can upload it here. Okay, so now I'm going into S3 bucket and I'm going to select one of the S3 bucket. So this is the S3 bucket where I'm going to upload my zip file. All right. So the command is AWS S3 CP, and then we need to give the file name GenAI package.zip. Okay, and then we need to give S3 bucket name. Let me copy this. All right. So it uploaded successfully. The file is uploaded successfully. Now, if we refresh it, we get our package here, right? So we need to click here, and then this is the object URL. So we need to select from here and come to your Lambda function, select Amazon S3 location, then save it. Since I since I zipped file on S3, since I zipped my file on EC2 instance, that's the reason that I'm selecting through the S3 bucket. However, if it is on your local system, yeah, I mean, it is inside some folder of your local computers, right? So you can select the zip file as well. Okay, so you can directly upload it like this. Okay, now it is uploaded, you can see, and since it is more than 10 MB file, so we cannot edit it here. Now you can see these notifications. Okay, now we need to change here lambda functions lambda handler. Okay, so here you need to give the name of the handler, and it should be the script name, right? So my script name is GenAI Lambda. So this is what I want to call. So I'm going to change the handler name here. Okay, like this, and save it. After that, you go to configurations, and here in general configurations, there is a, since it is a event driven architecture, so generally the timeout is in a very less seconds, right? So I'm going to increase it, and I'm going to make it 2 minutes 30 seconds, then save it, and I think we are good to go. Okay, so now we are going to test this application, test this function. So we need to pass the event, we need to pass the body in events here in JSON format. Okay, so now I'm going to pass some query so we can test this function here, and after that then we can create the function URL API to invoke these functions. Okay, so I have already prepared the body that we can pass and test it here. Okay, so now here I am going to put up our query. So I am going to say what is, I just take LLM. Okay, then I'm going to give it name Gen AI, and I say save, and then let's test it. So here you can see the program is just started, this function is just started, and if everything goes well, we will be getting the response here. So now you can see it has successfully giving us the response, right? Let's check with some other query, and this time I'm going to ask what is OpenAI. Okay, then again test the application. So now function is being executed, and we get the answer, right? We receive the answer. So this function is successfully working. Okay, now we are going to create, so now the funda is that how you can integrate with the applications, right? There is a two ways. One, you can check through the function URL, and second one, you can create the API, and that API endpoint you can integrate in your applications, right? So if you have the application, there is a front end, so you can integrate this API endpoint to your application, and that's how your applications will be able to query on the occasion of event to this Gen AI applications. Okay, so now let's create the function URL for this. We go here, and there is a function URL tab. Say create functions, none. You need to select here none. Then apart from this, you need to leave it as default, save it, and now we have this function URL. So we copy this and we check the post request in Postman. Okay, so now I'm going to give the query here. Let's say I'm asking uh, what is uh, DevSecOps. Okay, let's say I'm asking what is embeddings. Send the response. Okay, so we got the answer. It means this, we are successfully able to invoke this lambda functions through this function URL. Okay, this function URL. Now check some different query, and this time we are going to ask what is vector db. What is vector db? Okay, so now we are getting the response successfully. It means this function URL is perfectly invoking this Lambda functions. In between, you can get access all the codes from my GitHub repository, GenAI Lambda. You can clone this repository and access all the codes. So there is this script where currently I am performing this testing right now. Okay, so you can use this genai-lambda.py. Okay, there is another script genai-url. Why it is URL? Because let me explain you. So here I have passed one of the things. Okay, so I have passed this query string parameter. Why? Because there is a function's URL. Okay, so if I copy this function URL and then if I want to pass query here, right? So let's say I want to pass the query here, query underscore string equal what is devops. Okay, so if you want to pass query in function URL, okay, it will give answer. Currently it is not working. Why it is not working? Because I have deployed this script. Let me show you. I didn't pass it the query string parameter. Okay, so since currently I'm playing with this, and if you check the sections of, let me bring it down, let me scroll it down, and now if you see this, right, I am not passing the query string. Okay, so that is the reason that currently I am not getting the response in browser when I am trying to invoke this lambda functions through this function URL and trying to pass the query in browser. I am not able to do it because I am using this script where I didn't pass the query string. However, if you use this genai-url.py, if you start your application, if you create your functions using this script, you will be able to pass the query something like this. Now we want to create the API endpoint, so we can invoke this lambda functions through the API endpoint. There is a two ways. One, you can directly create from here, add trigger. I show you in both methods. So now you can say create a new API, leave it HTTP API, and if you want to go with the REST API, you can choose the REST API. I go with the HTTP API, and security is open. Then rest of the options you leave it default. Okay, add it. Okay, so now we can see we have one API here, and this is the API endpoint. So we take and we check it from the Postman whether we are receiving the response or not. Okay, so this time we are going to check what is numpy. Okay, so we are getting the response. Okay, now since here we have created the API gateway as a trigger. Okay, okay, so in this way we can invoke this lambda function through API gateway. Okay, so this API gateway is created at the same place that we have added as a trigger. Okay, so if we visit API gateway, there you will find this API gateway. Okay, so this is the API gateway which we have created as a gateway, right? The same we are finding here. Now if we create from here, okay, so there are two ways. One, you can add as a trigger, okay, and you can directly create from here as well through the API sections. Okay, API gateway. So if I go and create it, I say build, add integration. Here I need to select the Lambda function and then the ARN value. So I have two functions. This one is currently where I am working. So I'm going to select this one. Okay. And I'm going to give it name my GenAI. Okay. And then next, integrations target should be the same. Okay. GenAI app. This is the resource path. And then integration target is this Lambda functions. Okay. Now go. Okay. Sorry. Here. Next. And then you can keep the stage name default, or you want to change, you can change it. So I'm going to keep as a dev. Next. And everything looks okay. Now we are going to create. Okay, so successfully we have created stage as well, since we have already enabled the auto deployment, so there is no need to deploy it. Okay, and if we come back and here if we see, there should be two trigger. Okay, so now the number of API gateways is 2. Okay, so one is this one which we have added as a trigger. Okay, and second one is this one. So we can copy this URL from here. Okay, and now we can test through Postman. Okay, and we are sending the request now. So we are getting the response. Okay, let's say check something different. I say what is Kepler's law. Okay, so we are getting the response. So you can either you can create a function URL and you can invoke this Lambda functions through function URL, or you can create the API gateway. In both ways, from here also you can create, or you can directly jump into the API sections and then you can create from there also. And after that, then you can use this API endpoint and pass this endpoint into your applications front end, and that's how you can create the event driven applications. So I hope you really enjoyed these sessions, guys. And if you like these sessions, then follow me on LinkedIn and don't forget to subscribe my YouTube channel, The Learning Destinations. And don't forget to like it as well. So I'll see you in my next tutorial. Till the time, thank you so much for watching this, guys.